This segment follows the showing of the film Kanyini. The word Kanyini comes from my nation of the Yakandara people who are the caretakers of Uluru and Central Region. The two main energy points there is Karajuta, the place of many heads, as well as Uluru, the rock. And they're both different. Energies come from either of them because of their different makeup. But they still support each other by standing together. But there's really three in a line, three big formations coming up the geology of that central region, which is on the land of my people. The middle one is Uluru. That's the middle one, and that's totally made of sandstone. And in fact, all this place we live and walk on today, over 680 million years ago, that rock was as high as the Himalayas. And we walk on its erosion. 5 to 9 miles under where we live is Uluru, where once was. And it was made out of sandstone. Uluru is made of sand, and it's just, all that erosion has caused all that sand hills and sand we walk on, live on today, comes from that erosion state that time has worked since the period they were created. The Karajuta, which in my language means many heads, and you can see the many dome shapes there, and that's a geological term, so I had it at the tip of my head at the moment, but I've forgotten what it is. But it's conglomerate. When the people who knew rocks took us there to have a look at the geology of the places, and that was made from the mudslides in the time of the earthquakes period, consisting of rocks and sand together washing down. And then once again, that too was way up there. But the Jukupa story is two boys came in from the west, southwest. They were uninitiates. And as they walked, they said, wow, let's make a sand hill so that we can climb up and slide down. Now, these Jukupa boys were really real Jukupa boys. They were big boys. And now Jukupa is the word our anthropologists call dream time. So dream time Jukupa, that comes from my people of the Yankandara nation, said the two boys wanted to build this sand hills, and they built Karajuta first. But when they went way up there into the clouds and were sliding down, the rocks hurt their bottom. Because our mob didn't wear clothes those days. And they said, oh, this is too rough. And they built a number of them, about 30 they tried, and they wasn't happy with any one of them. So they walked east, and they came across the sand where Uluru is today. And they built this big one way up there, and they climbed. They was having great fun sliding down it and climbing and walking up it and sliding down. Same as the kind of sand hills people make on this beautiful beach here when you get that wet sand. And then they heard these men's voices at the bottom, at the base. It was the Mala men, and they were discussing the possibility of picking up uninitiated boys to go through law or initiation. And they said, let's get out of here, because they didn't want to go through initiation. So they went down, slid down, and went on the southern end of Uluru and went up towards what they call today Mount Connor, which is what we call Attila. And at Attila, the two mothers were mating, and they were the mothers of the two of the girls from the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters. And they were waiting there for the boys to catch up with them. And when the boys went across to Mount Connor or Attila, They met up with their mothers and then they headed north, and they camped on our station of Angus Downs. For those of you who's driven to Uluru, you would have driven through our property, my family's property called Angus Downs. It's a good little property. It's 180 square miles of it. And that's where the Seven Sisters camped. And their site is still there. So we're very lucky. You know, we have a site where the Pleiades girls camped on our cattle station. And then they wandered up north, and the Seven Sisters story is a story that goes from all over the world. You know, most of the indigenous country of the world have those stories of the Pleiades girls and the energy when they want to come and be earthlings. And there are stories of the moon wanting sometimes to come and just be an ordinary man and to touch and feel a woman and feel the attachment and the nice physical pleasure you can get from touching women. And the moon man likes to do that too. But when he came down here, the moon was related to everybody. Uncle here, grandpa there, brother there. And he was getting really frustrated because he landed at Elliot and he walked all the way down, going to all the Aboriginal camps in the region. And, oh, Grandpa, it's good to see you. Oh, Uncle, it's good to see you. And, of course, you don't marry your uncles or grandfathers or brothers, you know. So he walked down right to Alice Spring, and then he went out to the Western Aranda country. And he was sitting with his brothers there at one of our waterholes, and this girls and a couple of parents was jumping off the rocks at one of the places there, and they said, we don't know that one there, they don't belong to us. Oh, would you like to meet them? And they called his father and mother over while the girls were swimming, and they said this. They told the story of the moon man was looking for a wife, and they said, oh, we too, we're looking for a husband for our daughters. Would you be interested? And he said, I certainly would like to have the experience of feeling the physical, which we don't feel in the energy of consciousness in the sky. So they said, well, we can arrange a marriage. So a lot of you are star beings too, remember. You too belong to the universe, same as the Pleiades girls and the moon. Enjoy each other's company whenever you meet each other, because you too will eventually find your place in the sky when you had enough of the earth plane. I thought I'd just share that beautiful Chukuva story with you. Kanyini means living a life of unconditional love for all living and life, and accepting the responsibility by self for self. Blame no one. And the example I like to share is my boys, when they were starting to find girls they wanted to spend some time with, would come home very frustrated sometimes. Dad, that girl made me so mad. You know, she made me. No one can make you mad except yourself, because all those emotions come from self. And each time, I loved saying this, when you point or judgment of another causing your displeasure and happiness, one finger's pointing to that person, but three is pointing back at you. Always remember that. It starts with self. You are the only one who can retain the love you need to give to others. You can develop it, and it is your responsibility to do that. So don't expect anyone else to do it for you. Work steady with your mind, words, and action. You can think about it every moment of your life. You can pray about it all the moment of your life. You can preach about it all in my life. You might get pleasure in that, but it ain't going to do you any good. You can also talk about it verbally to everybody, every single person you meet in the streets. You can talk about it. You can talk about it to the children. You can talk about it to the old people. You can talk about it to your dogs. It ain't going to do any good. You have to live it and action to make the difference. And that's the challenge we're all in today. Living love in action. And how do you do that? You practice with your partner. You practice with your husband. You practice with your wife. You practice with your children. and reach the level of having a relationship where there's no condition in your love for your partner, for your children, for your girlfriend, for your boyfriend, for your father, for your mother. Once you've reached that, you'll find it so easy to take it out there. And if we can all do that, we can easily love each other tonight in each other. I have the One Tribe group here. They've always been my lovers. They've always been Barbara's lovers, and we have been their lovers. We've worked together in many situations, and they're here again, ready to work with me. And every one of us can have that. Where does it start? It starts in the mind. Then it starts in the words you can openly speak. Don't be ashamed of saying I love you. I speak to my sons, they're in their, 60s? Johnny, I just talked to Johnny, and straight away, we end up with I love you. My 50-year-old son, over 50-year-old son, Dad, I love you. And I said, son, I love you. And that's what it is. Use the words, it's good to hear that. But live it in action. It's better. Kanyini is that way of being. And every living thing loves you. Total love. The animals that give their life for you does that willingly because they love you. The trees and the vegetable and the plant people that give of their life so that we can all eat. And we've eaten many of these living things today in our meal. We've got to be grateful for that because they've done that because they loved us. Our belief is that system, because our family relationship system extends to that kind of feelings for all life, because all life make us who we are and cannot but be part of us. And it just makes so much common sense to love everything that is living on our land with us as family. And it's so easy to love when you see everybody as your family. Some people say if you have a marriage relationship, there's always a problem. It needn't be. It needn't be. If you really learn to love the Kanyini love of having no condition between you and your wife, you and your partner. No relationship need to have problems if they can learn to love Kanyini love, which is have no condition, just love. I want to leave that message with you today. I'd like to sing a little song for you, a Chukupa song of creation. You want to say anything, my beautiful wife?
I can't top that.
You don't have to top it, just stand beside it. Then you can help me sing, eh? Late one night, just after tea, my baby boy came up to me. With his eyes shining bright, he said to me, "Oh, my daddy, I want to know about something that bothers me. Daddy, where did I come from? You know the sun and the moon and the stars up in the sky. You see the mountain, the flowers and the trees. You see the river and the sea and feel the wind that blows so free. That is where and from them all you come from. Oh, my son, all I can say, are the things once said to me by your grandma and your grandpa so long ago. In the past when things were men and men were things long time ago, these were the words when I asked were said to me. You know the sun and the moon and the stars up in the sky. You see the mountain, the flowers and the trees. You see the river and the sea and feel the wind that blows so free. That is where and from them all you come from. Well, my son, all I can say are the things once said to me by your grandpa and your grandma so long ago. In the past when things were men and men were things long time ago, these were the words when I asked were said to me. You know the sun and the moon and the stars up in the sky. You see the mountain, the flowers and the trees. You see the river and the sea and feel the wind that blows so free. That is where and from them all you come from. That is where and from them all we come from. The Chukupa song of creation. And in our culture, we believe in, when we're in the state of spirituality prior to coming to earth, we're just drops of water in an ocean of love. That oneness is a reality. But it doesn't just put only humans are there. In our culture, we believe all life is equal to each other. So every plant that's living with us has equal rights, so as we too have that. We have no more rights than any other living thing that's living with us. And it's our responsibility to acknowledge their right to live with us in the state they chose to be in. They breathe, they drink water, they eat food. Not the same way we do, but without them doing the sort of things we do to live, they too will die, same as we would die. And to me that makes a lot of common sense, to get the similarities of all living. If your little dog didn't eat, it'll die. If it didn't drink water, it'll die. If your pussycat didn't eat, didn't drink, it'll die. Same as us. And that's what the old people say. Everything is the same. We are all living entities and should respect each other because of that commonness that creates the oneness. Life. Life is that. And it seems it's not hard for me to really accept that trees have right. But from that little raindrop in the water of an ocean of spirituality, of living, we're all there because that's where we all come from. That's why the major part of our makeup is fluid. That's how closely related to every other living thing. Because exactly, we are our difference is really minor. And our similarities are real big, major. Tick. And my people have taught me to care for all living. And I like it. And in that system they say, when you decide to come to the earth plane and you're discussing it, a lot of the tree people are listening to it. We're saying the same ocean of love with you. A lot of the snake people are listening to it. A lot of the bird spirits are listening to it. They're all there. You're all together in it, in the sameness, in the oneness of that reality. And if they say, oh, if you're going there, I'm going to go too. So you decide on a site what you're going to pick, and it might be some of the creator sites. In coming to Uluru is a big snake from the south coast. And 100 miles wide as she crawled away. Not necessarily straight line, they wander all over the place like the rivers. But he found his way to the north of Uluru. But everything that is conceived and born on that energy line is as a snake totem, and is the major number one relationship system that you bring into this world from the spirit world in our system. So you come in from a spiritual relationship, forgetting it at birth, and find yourself being born within a family system, related, because you have already established that relationship by choosing the one totem creation site that you have decided to be conceived on and given birth on. And it's that kind of common reality that has retained peace amongst 500 nations in this continent of Australia. There's no history of war amongst 500 nations in this country. That's why I like to promote everyone is family. And all you have to do is accept that and really greet every neighbour, every person you meet as a family member that you haven't seen for a while, if you for the first time. And for the ones who retain your friendship with each other, strengthen that in every way you possibly can. And me and Barbara, we live in different parts of the world, but it didn't take us long to get together. I bumped into her in Perth. Yeah, and Julie said, there's a girl looking for a husband there. And, and I said, oh, who? She said, that one there. I said, oh, I'd love to have her for a wife. Yeah, so Julian made us have a relationship together. Something like that, eh, Barbara? So Julian's really an angel of love. He brings people together if he thinks they're right for each other.
Do you want to hear the story of how we met?
Yes. It's Barbara's time to talk.
It's hard to know where to start because, we all look back in our lives, I'm sure, and we see how the universe is so brilliant in setting the stage for where we're meant to go. And all of it ties in, I think, hopefully to our purpose, and not just our personal learning and karma cleaning up and all of that, but really the purpose that has to do with being in service to each other and to all life. So I was born into this family that really set me up to have an understanding and a kind of an innate way of being that was without judgment because of differences. And, like many people, I had many years of a lot of hard learning, the kind of learning that comes through making the mistakes and, getting the bumps. But something shifted that coinciding with becoming a grandmother around that time. And there was a destiny waiting for me that I really, it took me by surprise a little bit. But what happened was I was in Perth for my grandson's first birthday because my daughter had met and married an Australian many years ago. And I was there for 5 weeks when Dakota turned 1. And the day before I left Perth, I had a dream with a voice that was very clear and told me to go to the didgeridoo breast shop in Fremantle, that I was going to meet somebody to collaborate with in my work. And so I told my daughter, we have to go to didgeridoo breast shop. I was looking for a didgeridoo player that used the didge for healing. So I went back to America, and more of my life blew up a little bit, and I lost my job, but I stayed in touch with Julian. And he eventually told me about Kanyini, because you had been invited to play the Didge along with Gareth at the opening of Kanini when it came to Perth. So because we had had these conversations and something felt really right about it, I went online and I Googled it and I ordered the film without hesitating. And I was in the middle of a very tedious divorce after 22 years of marriage, very unexpected. And the last thing I really needed to be doing was to be distracted from the business of divorcing, because it's a lot of work. But I watched this film, and I was so blown away by what I saw that I picked up the telephone, and this is a little bit uncharacteristic, but I picked up the telephone and I rang the producer in Sydney. And I said, this man needs to be on Oprah with the Dalai Lama. This is the answer to world peace. Why doesn't the world know about this culture? And why is it that I've been coming to Australia for years and I never had an inkling about the beauty of the indigenous people's ways of living? So I, that night, actually, got woken up again by a voice. I have to be careful when I talk about these voices because they have. But it's the truth of the story. I got woken up by another voice. It was as if someone stood over me with a megaphone and woke me out of a sound sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it said to me, "This is the root." And it had the same quality as two other times in my life. One had been 20 years before, and then one a couple of years before. And the first time it said, "Love is the key to all things." And so that was rattling around in my awareness for 20 years. I'm still looking for the love for 20 years. I'm looking everywhere. And the next time it said, "Go deeper," when I had been experiencing a lot of challenge, betrayal and sadness and grieving and all kinds of things. And then this is the root. So I decided that, I couldn't know what I knew and do nothing about it. So I went on a mission to share this film with everybody I could. And I told the filmmaker, I said, "You've got to get this in America, in American format." It was only in Australian format, so it could only be shown on a computer. So I ended up buying a projector and speakers, which you experience today, because groups started to form. I'd show it to a friend and they'd say, "Oh, my so-and-so, my spiritual group would want to see this." And other people said, "Oh, my environmental group is going to want to see this." And I was in America for a year and a half showing Kanini to everyone I knew. And so many people were saying, "What can we do? What can we do?" And I was saying, "I don't know. I only know what I can do." So a year and a half goes by and my daughter says to me, "Mom, why don't you come? The divorce is over. Why don't you come and be a grandmother? Get a 1-year visa. It'd be so helpful for me, and I think it'd be really good for you." So I did. I flew to Perth on a 1-year visa, and Julian was still there. And he says to me eventually, "Guess who's coming to town?" So little did I know that Bob Randall was on the board of the healing place where Julian worked, and he was coming to town to give a workshop. So I, of course, signed up. And I woke up the day of the workshop, and I'm not a groupie. I would have been happy to be invisible, but I woke up that day and I felt like someone had injected champagne into my blood vessels. I was effervescing. And it was not a feeling I have ever felt again, nor had I ever felt it since. but I was effervescent and I was hot. I was really hot, and you can see I'm not a hot person. So at any rate, I knew something was up. And I had had many experiences beyond just those voices that were so potent with feeling, whatever you want to call it, the super consciousness that goes beyond us, that guides us in life. I'd had many experiences of that. And so at this point, they were so continual that nothing was more than I could handle. I just simply had no choice but to surrender to whatever was happening. So to wake up and be effervescent was just another experience. So I go to the workshop, and after a little while, we're waiting for the workshop to start, and Bob comes walking over to the table. And I'm sitting at a big round table in the center of a large, like, banquet room where you'd have a wedding. And Julian is there, and Mark is there, and some women who worked at the healing center were there. And Bob came walking over straight up to Julian, and Julian and Mark stand up and greet Bob, and Julian introduces Bob to Mark. And Julian's got this spread of crystals lying on the table on a black cloth. And Mark and Julian are both pulling these stones out of their pockets, saying, "Oh, look, Uncle Bob, I have this one for you to touch, and this one." And I'm kind of noticing that you've got your hands in your pockets, you know, with the cowboy boots and the cowboy hat and the hands in the pockets, not taking the offered stones. And so I'm just noticing that, but trying not to really, you know, intrude on whatever was going on. And then I glance over, and Bob does this. And, you know, that's universal sign language. So I went over to him, and you held out your arms like this and gave me a big hug, and then started to kind of, I thought he was laughing, but he was crying. And we lean back, and I look into his eyes, and he's got tears streaming down his face. And then he held me again, and he says to me, "I've been waiting for you." Now, again, you know, the champagne, the voices, "I've been waiting for you." It's like, oh, okay. And then he says to me, "I need to talk with you. You know, can we sit down for a moment?" And so we sit down, and he says to me, "You know, I'm from Arnhem Land. I'm a straight shooter. I don't muck around." And this was good news for me. I was fine with the truth. And he says to me, "When I held you, the grannies came. And in my culture, Granny's law is highest law. And you never question it." That I got. And then he says to me, "Are you married?" I said, "No, I'm divorced." "Are you really divorced?" "Yeah, I'm really divorced." Because in America, you're either divorced or you're not divorced. I didn't know that there was another
way of being.
There
was in Australia.
And then Bob basically said to me, "You know, this sort of thing doesn't happen for just no reason. It means something very special is going on. And I'd like to see you more while I'm here this week. Will you come to my teaching events?" And I said, "Yes, I'd love to." And that was the beginning of how we met. But what happened next was the one that really got me. Because just as the workshop was starting, your girlfriend arrived.
Yeah. I was expecting her. And she turns up with the guy who owns that restaurant place where we're having our workshop, and Tara just arrives in, and I'm saying, Tara, meet Barbara, Barbara, meet Tara, and my telephone ring, my mobile phone. Bob, is Mum there? I said, yeah, baby, she's just arrived. I called from her daughter in Melbourne. And I said, Tara, daughter wants you. And I hand the phone to Tara. She's standing here, Barbara's standing here. And she said, Bob, my daughter's in hospital, a premature baby. She's going to have a birth soon. I need to go to Melbourne. And the driver said, if I run Tara back now, we can catch the plane the next hour. And I said, goodbye, Tara. And she left.
When it was announced that Tara was, her daughter had gone into premature labor and she was leaving, I remember this moment because I just thought, oh my gosh, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. It was so obvious. And, so much had led up to all of that time. And if I had learned anything, it was, be careful what you ask for, truly, because it is amazing when we're willing to be in the service to all that will be and really surrender ourselves to this force of the universe that really expresses itself as an incredible intelligence of love. Anything is possible and everything is possible. And I had really taken a vow at some point that, to myself, that I was only willing to contribute to that which was of truth and love. That was where I had come to, because I realized that so much of my life had been invested in learning experiences for me, but they were just that. I hadn't reached that level where I really felt like I was living in service. I was always living and learning for myself, and I was very interested in where was the love. So I studied with a number of teachers, and I had a number of different experiences. And when I saw Kanyini, I knew there's the love. There is the love within this culture, within this way of being. It's not just one man, it's this whole culture, this whole indigenous way of being expressed through this man. And it was not my expectation to become part of it, but it was my expectation and my just a natural unfolding to serve that. And then there was this other destiny that that was there. And I feel very blessed and very humbled by all of it.
And when you find that space, you will find you are eternal. Every single one of us can be, if we so desire, and you live in the way that you can be in that space. Because what stood beside us as soon as I touched Barbara was my dead grandparents and my dead wife and my dead mother. And that's what caused the tears. I became so emotional. And because that only happened once other time before me, and it was a time I composed the song My Brown Skin Baby, They Take Him Away, where my mother came and sat in the plane seat beside me. And I knew it was her because I became teary, and when I looked at her like this, it was my mother. She was dead too. But this Kanyini love is unreal. Death is nothing but another place to be. It's nothing to be afraid of. And you can just come and go as you desire. When you live in that space of love, that Kanyini level of love, having no condition, but loving for the sake of just loving. And to be happy, it's a good level and space to be at. When you can so easily, your people who passed on can just come and stand beside you when they want to convey a message to you. And my dead wife was there, and my grandfathers was there, and my grandmother, and it was this grin on their face I couldn't get over, and I'll never forget it. It was like, we've travelled the world for you, and we know this is the right woman. Will you take her or not? These were all my dead ancestors standing beside me, and I looked at her again, and I said, is this real? So I had to touch her again the same, and they said, it's real, we mean it. That's what's possible, living in that Kanyini space. And if you get there, you'll realise exactly what I'm saying. It is so, the oneness dominates, where death is just a doorway of another way of being. And I want to share one little story for you. Well, my nephew, you may have heard of him. He worked for the department. My nephew was Charlie Perkins. Those you may have known him, that's my nephew. We knew he was dying. He knew he was dying. Me and him met near the Commonwealth Bank, and we was just opposite us. And we walked over, and I said, I'll show you, Charlie, you stay here. I opened the Commonwealth Bank door, and I walked in, and I said, Charlie! Yeah, Uncle? Can you hear me? Yeah, of course I can hear you. You know I'm here, eh? Of course I know that. I saw you go in through the door. I said, well, I'm dead. And he got it. I walked out. I said, I've just come back to you from being dead. He said, thank you, Uncle. I have no fear of going. There was a lot of dead people there with me, and they was all alive. And it is beautiful to live life to the fullest while you're here, but live it with love for all living. For yourself, start off with yourself and understand the kind of love you want, desire the kind of love you want, and live the love you want with, as I mentioned earlier, practice with your partners, practice with your husband and wives, practice with your children, practice with your plants and your pets, and practice with the people you meet each moment of your life while you... And we can extend peace to everybody. And you don't have to stay there wearing yourself out. Just have it for that moment you want to keep it, retain it. But live it within yourself so that it's part of your very being. And it is such a good place to be. I recommend it highly for everybody. Well, it's in the energy between people more as well as you. Once you find it in each other, it's in every living thing. But you can identify it through the relation. Do you have a pet? Yeah, that's where they can teach you how to identify it in other things. Yeah, and especially dogs. Yeah, and those of you who have got dogs know exactly what I'm saying. And once you can learn to understand what they're saying when they're with you, and you can't help but learn that when you got your own dog. You talk together so often that you can... The tone of their voice is enough to know exactly what they're saying, you know. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty, you know. They use that different tone level without... And you know, you can interpret their barks or the sounds they make with a tone level. That's what I discovered with the dogs I've owned. You know, and you just talking to them like you're talking to another brother, another father, another mother, you know, another mate. And then you can establish that same relationship with the horses. I found I can do the same with the horses, but the plants are a little bit more difficult because they haven't got no ears. But what my big brother Bill Nargic said, you know, when we were talking about it, it all comes from this part of hearing. through your feelings, through here. And it's a combination of your heart and family chakras, and it's in between that. Because it consists of both, the love from the heart and the love from this part here as well, for your family, what we call the Kurunpaku, the feelings of the heart and the emotions as it comes and goes, which is separate to this one. But you can link them all up so that it can really be together. Then the family, the love of family, and it's so real. And once those animals become family, or your plant you've grown become your child, and those who grow up their own plants know exactly what I'm saying. And it's so easy to identify it. And that then even when you're out there, then in the bush, you can see the trees that you are related to and the one you may not be related to, because we also have in-laws in plants world and animal worlds. What we classify in-laws, you don't have to say hello to them, and it's quite all right. And they know that too, They kind of like that too, They're seeing you, but they're not seeing you. And I bump a lot of them in Sydney here. A lot of people and plants who's looking at me but not seeing me, And I've got to do the same with them too, And you have that commonness about it, and that space is everywhere. But it must start from within self and develop it by actioning it. English language is hard to speak. It's my third language.